How do you start a conversation and make friends? I'm Chad Littlefield. I co-wrote a book called Ask Powerful Questions, Create Conversations That Matter. And in this video, I'm gonna share one of my absolute favorite methods to make conversation that can be used even in the most extreme circumstances, an elevator. Classically awkward scenario. You can use it in many other scenarios, but I wanna share it in the context of using it in an elevator, because if you can make conversation happen in an elevator, you can make conversation happen in a whole bunch of other contexts. I will also share 2 traps that people often fall into when they try to make conversation. Let's get into it. All right, I'm not a fan of fluff unless it's on a sandwich, so let's dive right in. The book is structured in this Ask Powerful Questions pyramid with multiple different skills and mindsets to be able to create conversations that matter. And I want to zoom right in on chapter number 2, on this idea of rapport, which Will and I define as creating a relationship of trust with another human being. And specifically, the tool that we share is to follow your natural, genuine curiosity based on something that the other person is wearing, carrying, or sharing. So that could be a lot of stuff. So imagine that we're in an elevator, strangers walked in. Actually, we need a stranger. So imagine that you've just stepped into an elevator with a stranger and all you have to create conversation is what exists in that little metal box. Using this tool to follow your natural, genuine curiosity based on something that you see that they're wearing, carrying, sharing, or presenting. And the reason this tool is so powerful is that even though an elevator is usually silent, right? There's that like narrative that was classic awkward elevator music playing. Usually an elevator is silent. I would say that the conversation is already 5 paragraphs deep when you walk in, because when this person walked out into the world or they turned up on a Zoom call, they knew that they were going to be in public. And so they put things on their body to choose to represent or say something in some way, right? So if you're in an all gray sweatsuit and you didn't do your hair, you're probably saying, I don't care right now, right? And that's presenting something, and it creates an opportunity for you to be curious. And most of the time, now there's always risk when you're going to start a conversation, but most of the time the risk here is fairly low because they knew that they were going to be putting this on. I knew that I was going to have a wedding ring when I was shooting today. And so if you asked me about my wedding ring, what's the story behind my wedding ring, I would have some really interesting things to share with you. And I told you something without even saying a word. And so based on people's necklaces, their clothes, a t-shirt that they're wearing, a hat, but also something that could be in their surroundings as well. So what do you see in their space? Is there something that you can reference or ask about? Ask to that person, but is in that shared space. So if there's a poster up on the wall in an elevator, being able to spark a conversation based on a poster on a wall or something that's shared in a space is much safer and more organic than if you were to say, spark a conversation out of nowhere and say like, hey, what do you think of the game last night, right? It's not in the elevator. And so when you bring it in, it has a much higher potential chance of being awkward. So quick example or tip to help make this work better too. If I were to ask my friend here a question, like, why are you so two-faced? Right? You hear the amount of judgment in that question. I would argue it feels like there's a lot of judgment in that question because it begins with the word why. So really great questions tend to begin with how or what, and not why. I explained that in some other videos that you can check out, but a better question might be, hey, what inspired the two-tone paint job today? Do you see how that just has a little bit less judgment and a little bit more genuine curiosity? If you want to start really great conversations and make friends, you want curiosity to be high and judgment to be very low. Now, before you jump off this video and you're like, cool, tool, let me go practice it, let me share 2 traps that people commonly fall into when they try to use this idea to build a relationship of trust and make conversation with somebody new. The first trap is that people go curiosity shopping. And so they look around, they say, oh, and so Steven, who's filming right now, oh, Steven, what a nice shirt. That's so beautiful, right? And when I do that, that's cool, but it's not going to start a conversation. It's actually a conversation ender because it's a sentence that ends in a period. And so you have to turn your shopping or your compliments into a question, or else there is no conversation to be had. By the way, the idea is not to just talk about Steven's shirt or my friend's two-tone face forever. The idea behind this tool is that when that person answers that question, even with a few sentences, you're gonna learn 3, 4, 5, 6 other things that you can be curious about, because conversation is very exponential, right? It's gonna span out from there. Trap number 2, big words, self-disclosure versus counter-transference. Oh my goodness. So self-disclosure, first of all, a conversation without self-disclosure is actually an interrogation, right? So if I'm sitting here, question, that is not a great way to meet somebody else. And so being mindful of using this tool to follow your curiosity, but also empathetic enough to know when it's appropriate to share and make a little bit of self-disclosure happen between you and that person. Countertransference is a psychological term. I had a mentor who was a counseling psychologist. His name is Jeff. He's a beautiful human being, and he wrote a book about countertransference. Countertransference is basically the idea that when in a counseling relationship, that when you are in a conversation and the counselor, you say something that actually triggers the counselor, and they start projecting potentially their emotions onto you. And so you want to be mindful if you get really excited about what somebody shared because you have some commonality with it, right? If you find out that they're a scuba diver, your tendency is going to be to say, oh, I'm a scuba diver too. Can we be friends? And that's not the ideal thing to do. The ideal thing to do is cool. That's a commonality. That's really cool. Keep that on the DL for a little bit and just be curious about their favorite scuba dive that they went on. Be curious about some of their experiences scuba diving. And at some point, it'll make total sense to reveal and self-disclose that you also scuba dive, and there will be this really beautiful connection that happens. If you like this video, I make them because I believe that conversations should matter and conversations that don't matter shouldn't be had. And so me and Will wrote a book all about it. Feel free to go on Amazon and check it out, but I also believe information should be free. So paper does cost money, but below you can grab a free link to an excerpt of the book to unpack in your own time. The free excerpt shares the first chapter of the book, which really lays the foundation for this tool that I just shared in this video. It was awesome hanging out in cyberspace with you. Have an awesome day.